For if the bomb that drops on you gets your friends and neighbors too, there'll be nobody left behind to grieve, and we will all go together when we go. What a comforting fact that is to know. Universal bereavement and inspiring achievement. Yes, we all will go together when we go. We will all go together when we go. All suffused with an incandescent glow. No one will have the endurance to collect on his insurance. Lloyds of London will be loaded when they go.
Love that, Tom Lear. Today, unsurprisingly, we had the news that Trey Gowdy was denouncing the Mueller investigation, calling for it to be closed up. So as a distraction so people won't get the news, what do we have? My guest today won't be surprised. Multiple people shot at newspaper in Annapolis. Dan Cromer, you've done so much great work on Las Vegas, on Parkland. Welcome back to the show. Here's more grist for your mill.
Hello, Jim. How are you?
Good. I'm so relieved to hear your voice. We've been out of contact, had so much trouble reaching you. Mona and I have been both acutely concerned, my friend.
Well, we will all go together as we go.
Yes.
Such a comforting feeling that's to show. We will all go together as we go. Yeah, I appreciate that, Jim. I know I've been out of pocket, so to speak, a bit under the weather, and I think literally under the weather. When I spoke to you last, I thought maybe I had this some type of summertime flu, as my immune system seemed to weaken, and I felt fatigued, really just not feeling myself, not the energy level that I'm used to having, and yesterday had a pretty rough day, and it occurred to me that I think I'm responding to the weather. It's not that I have this virus that I'm trying to shake and gradually feeling better, but I know in my area we've had some really high temperatures, and of course the chemical spraying, and I just think the air quality has just been very poor. And I think I've not been responding well to that. So, that's kind of where I am now. But, yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you today and, certainly having a better day today.
Well, let me give you a few stories and get your reaction to it. Everyone in the world, I suppose, now knows that the Red Hen owner, Stephanie Wilkinson, chased our president's press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and her kids out of her restaurant. She even when Sarah went across the street, she even followed her and continued her harassment. That was greeted warmly by the employees at the Red Hen, though I think it was disgraceful. It turns out that the business owners in Lexington took a very dim view of it. She has in the past been the director of something called, Main Street Lexington, executive director of Main Street Lexington, and they took a vote, and it was 89% that she shouldn't continue, only 11% that she should, so she's actually been removed from her position. It turns out this relatively small town of Lexington is in a county that voted for Trump roughly 66% to 33%. Stephanie Wilkinson resigned from her role as executive director at Main Street Lexington. Elizabeth Outland Branner, the president of the organization, wrote in an email, considering the events of the past weekend, Stephanie felt it best for the continued success of Main Street Lexington she should step aside. And that had been preceded by an earlier remark from the organization. We do not condone the actions of Stephanie Wilkinson, owner of the Red Hen restaurant and director of Main Street Lexington. She has embarrassed our town and has given Lexington a bad reputation. So many people are upset, and the negative impact and nasty backlash toward our little community is downright appalling. Our town is actually a wonderful place. Please do not condemn us for one person's action. It seems to me, Dan, this is very much on the par with private restaurant establishment owners in the past excluding people on the basis of their race, their color. In this case, she's excluding people on the basis of their politics. It's really outrageous. What does she want? There to be restaurants for Republicans and restaurants for Democrats? My opinion is if you're in a commercial interaction with the public, if it's a public establishment, you have to take all patrons on a par, regardless of their politics, and that this was truly offensive conduct, and I believe it's backfiring massively on those who were in support of taking this action and punishing those who work for Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Jim. This, to me, just demonstrates how desperate these oligarchs are with, coming up with anything at all to try to disparage Trump or anyone associated with him. So, again, it just shows their desperation. And I think we should be concerned if we were not seeing this desperation. And so, I think it is a good thing that these things are happening because they are going to backfire. This is going to backfire. It's obviously ridiculous. And anyone who looks at this objectively is going to come to the conclusion that, this could be me next. Where does this lead?
Yeah.
This is obviously something that can't be sustained. It's just simply a failing attempt at more of these divide and conquer, the tried and true divide and conquer strategies that we've been up against from day one. I mean, anyone who's even buying into this Republican Democrat paradigm is being played for a fool. It's a joke. We see this red team, this blue team thing is what we really need to, in my opinion, continue to get away from, and take a long break from the identity politics that are often sandwiched in with this divide and conquer strategy. It's a joke. And it's going to fail, and it's failing.
Well, I think Trump has really disrupted the two-party system because he effected a hostile takeover of the Republican Party, a kind of a populist uprising that took control away from the establishment. The congressional Republicans, of course, want to reassert it. We now have the interesting development that Justice Kennedy has announced he's going to retire from the Supreme Court to give Trump the chance to appoint another conservative justice. Kamala Harris, who has been widely regarded as a leading candidate for the Democratic nomination, has predicted that if Trump gets to pick the justice, it will mean the destruction of the Constitution. That's a rather stunning remark. I think she might be more plausible, more believable if they didn't have all these problems in California that aren't being dealt with. For example, I'm looking at a map of the excremental growth in San Francisco, where between 2011 and 2017, the amount of human excrement being deposited on the roadways and gutters of San Francisco has just grown dramatically, I'd say well in excess of 500%. We also have the interesting development that CBS, which is no fan of CNBC, actually, no fan of Trump, has done a poll and discovered that Trump is enjoying a great deal of support from the public. There's majority approval for Trump on the economy. It's 51% to 39%. There's support for Trump on trade negotiations. There's even support for Trump on his immigration policy. So it seems to me that if the Democrats think that the public is going to come rushing to their side when they're taking controversial stands like banning Trump people from restaurants, I don't think that's going to fly, Dan.
Well, yeah, of course it's not. I mean, it's just, I mean, it really, Jim, I mean, if you stop and think about, like, listen to what the words that, you're saying, that we're saying out loud, it's insane. I mean, it's just the fact that we're having these conversations, to me, is quite telling about the state of affairs and the state of the oligarchs. I mean, their backs to the wall. They're obviously desperate. I mean, as desperate as we've ever seen. And no, I mean, it's not going to work. It voids any kind of reason. And the fact that they're trying it, I mean, it's crazy to me.
Let me give you further reflections on this. We have a black activist posting an assassination threat against the President of the United States. The American people shouldn't allow Trump to nominate another justice by any means necessary. This is really stunning. Here's part of the story. On Wednesday, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy announced to be retiring from the bench at the end of July. The liberals immediately melted down over the idea of President Trump choosing another conservative justice to the court. Black activist Samuel Sinigawe called for President Trump to be assassinated on Wednesday from his blue-check verified Twitter account. Sinigawe said the Supreme Court is too important, it's everything. The American people should not allow Trump to nominate another justice by any means necessary. The radical black activist has since deleted his tweet. However, we have a screenshot, and I see it here. This is leading to a lot of concern about whether violence is going to break out. 1/3 of voters think civil war is likely soon. 59% say anti-Trump liberals will resort to violence. This comes from Zero Hedge. A shocking 31% of voters say it's likely the United States will experience a second civil war over the next 5 years, according to a new Rasmussen poll. Breaking it down by race, 44% of blacks think a second civil war is likely in the next 5 years, while 28% of whites and 36% of other minority voters are similarly concerned. Here's some highlights. 31% of voters say civil war is likely in the next 5 years. 11% say it's very likely. 59% of respondents are concerned that those opposed to Trump will resort to violence. 37% of Democrats and 32% of Republicans fear a second world civil war is imminent. Voters who believe the nation is divided has jumped from 50% before Trump's inauguration to 55%. 42% of voters say the country is headed in the right direction, a figure that ran in the mid to upper 20s for most weeks during the last year of Obama's presidency. 51% of voters blame Trump for poor relations with the media. However, only 40% think it's possible for the president to do anything of which the media will approve. 51% of voters agree with the Wisconsin Democratic gubernatorial candidate Matt Flynn, who said his party is pickled in identity politics and victimology. Given the spate of violence directed toward Trump supporters, which began during the 2016 election, most recently manifest itself in the form of stalking, public shaming, and threatening Trump officials, it's easy to see how nearly 1/3 of voters think civil war is on the horizon. There are also scores of leftist hate groups roaming around looking for a fight. Here are some of the incidents, Dan, just to reminisce. Cheesecake Factory employees attack black man for wearing MAGA hat. Capitol Police arrest male Dem operative for assaulting female Trump admin official. Trump supporter brutally attacked in D.C. restaurant. Danish tourist mugged at knife point in New York over MAGA hat. Black Trump supporters spit on for being a black man wearing a MAGA hat. Minnesota conservative students say they've been violently threatened at St. Olaf College. Chicago teens kidnap and torture a Trump supporter while they live stream from Facebook. This has led to the following situation where James Woods, for example, has said, buy guns, vote, violence will be the next stop on the hashtag Maxine slippery slope. We will fight bad. Aides to President Donald Trump are being advised to get guns and carry permits amid a growing threat of violence following comments by Representative Maxine Walters, Democratic California, and others. Dan, I think this turns their whole gun control agenda into shambles all by itself. If there weren't all the excellent reasons why we oughtn't to be giving up our guns, they've just created a new one, namely that the loony left is threatening to bring about a violent attack on the right wing. I'm appalled.
Yeah, it is appalling. Jim, what's the source for those numbers that you were just dictating?
That was out of a Zero Hedge article entitled Tyler Durden on the June 27th, 2018 on Zero Hedge. The title is "1/3 of voters think civil war likely soon, while 59% say anti-Trump liberals will resort to violence." I find this to be a very balanced source of information, actually, and Tyler Durden has come across to me in general as highly trustworthy.
Did Zero Hedge conduct that survey in gathering the data, or did they? I'm just curious what that source is.
Well, he mentions an entity called Far Left Watch that may be, having tracked the numbers, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Do the numbers look odd to you? I mean, there's so much more that goes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it does sound odd, but this is my opinion, and my opinion isn't isn't typically the mainstream accepted narrative, to say the least. But to me, I just don't see this imminent civil war. I mean, I just don't see this taking place. To me, that just seems like more fear mongering, more divide and conquer strategy. I mean, we were hearing the war bells of World War III, right? It's imminent, it's happening, for months and months and months daily. And of course it never happened. And of course it will never happen, in my opinion. And it was used there to keep the fear going. And then you'll notice now that the World War III drums have subsided, and Israel was shown as the only player in the Middle East that seemingly had any interest in bombing anything for real. Now that has been exposed, they have moved right along to civil war. Now we need a civil war since we don't have a World War III. And again, I just don't see it. I don't see people, taking the time to participate in anything, especially a civil war. I mean, people in general are driving their cars, they're commuting in the suburbs, and they're watching TV. And if they have any free time at all, they mow their lawn. I mean, that's what that's what I see. So where are these people going to conduct and participate in a civil war?
Here's more grist for your mill, Dan. This is from Wayne Allen Root. I believe this was on Daily Caller. Have liberals become domestic terrorists? Liberals call Trump and conservatives who support him Nazis and Hitler, which, as I pointed out in my last column, is wrong, reckless, and borders on insanity. Hitler and the Nazis killed 6 million Jews and tens of millions of others in World War II, according, I add, to the official narrative. Nothing compares to Hitler and Nazis. To make that comparison is obscene. But it's ironic that Democrats and liberals are the ones who are closest to acting like Nazis. If not Nazis, they sure are acting like the mafia, or murdering street thugs, or domestic terrorists. Take your pick. Liberals are purposefully demonizing, intimidating, and persecuting people whose politics they disagree with. They are inciting violence. This is no joke. They are going to get someone killed, whether it's a Republican politician or an ICE agent or just a conservative in the wrong place at the wrong time, wearing a red Trump MAGA hat. As sure as I'm sitting here, someone is going to kill a conservative based on this violent rhetoric. Ask Steve Scalise about the odds of that. Ask GOP Congressman Brian Mast, a pro-open borders liberal nutcase, was just arrested for threatening to murder his children. Here are a few more horror stories. Trump spokesman Sarah Sanders and her family were forcefully kicked out of the Red Hen restaurant in Lexington, Virginia. The hateful, vicious restaurant owner then followed the family across the street and screamed at them in the next restaurant. This is obsessed, stalker, mentally deranged behavior. Don't liberals want to destroy any Christian business for refusing service to gays? Don't they think government should fine them $100,000 a day? Yet a group of gay waiters, according to the owner of the restaurant, thought it was perfectly okay to refuse service to a Republican. What's the difference between refusing service to a gay person, a black person, or a Republican? Isn't hate? Even better. Democrats don't think we have a right to enforce our own border, and our president has no right to vet people coming into America. But Democrats think they have a right to vet and deport Republicans at any business in America? Nut jobs. Can you even imagine a white Republican restaurant owner kicking black Obama officials out of a restaurant? We'd be witnessing mass violence, rioting, and anarchy in the streets of every big city in America if that ever happened. Peter Fonda called for the kidnapping of Barron Trump and for him to be raped in a cage populated by pedophiles. He called for a similar crime against HHS Secretary Kristen Nielsen. D-list comedian Tom Arnold plans to show up at 12-year-old Barron's school to harass him and make him feel uncomfortable. Can you even imagine what would happen if even after Obama sent the IRS to destroy me, which was a crime, by the way? I dared publicly to suggest someone attack and rape his two beautiful girls. Who would do that? Only a mentally deranged liberal. MSNBC's Donnie Deutsch said not only is Trump Hitler, but that liberals need to start calling all Trump supporters Nazi. HHS Secretary Nielsen was harassed at an NYC restaurant by a DOJ staffer. Pure insanity. Republican Attorney General of Florida, Pam Bondi, was verbally assaulted, bullied, and spit on outside a movie theater on Saturday night. A senior DHS official found a decapitated, burnt animal carcass on his doorstep. An NYU professor published the home address of ICE agents nationwide on the internet. Even a sitting Democrat Congresswoman, Mad Maxine Waters, encouraged the public to absolutely harass White House officials anytime they see them in public spaces. Ironically, liberals are exhibiting the actual behavior of the Nazis they claim Republicans to be, and I repeat, they are going to incite murder. But it has backfired badly. Even DNC officials are afraid the public is turning off to Democrats. They fear a backlash at the polls in November. I see the signs everywhere. Democrats have gone way too far. They're going down to an historic defeat in November. This is what happens when you act like domestic terrorists. Dan, that's a lot, but I wanted to review the bidding because there's a lot that's been going on here.
You know, I mean, I've just, it's like, where do you begin with all of that? You know, again, I would say that, you know, this is all fake. You know, since the Trump election, winning of the election, right on cue, we've seen, you know, paid protesters, paid agitators. We went through this cycle last year, and it's the same thing over and over again. I mean, you use your Hollywood fools and your paid useful idiots. That's what I see.
Dan, hold that thought. We'll continue after this break. Jim Fetzer, your host, with my special guest, Dan Cromer. We'll be right back.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Was it a conspiracy? Did you know that the police in Boston were broadcasting "This is a drill, this is a drill" on bullhorns during the marathon? That the Boston Globe was tweeting that a demonstration bomb would be set off during the marathon for the benefit of bomb squad activities, and that one would be set off in 1 minute in front of the library, which happened as the Globe had announced. Peering through the smoke, you could see bodies with missing arms and legs, but there was no blood. The blood only showed up later and came out of a tube. They used amputee actors and a studio-quality smoke machine. Don't let yourself be played. Check out And Nobody Died in Boston Either. Available at moonrockbooks.com. That's moonrockbooks.com.
What the heck is the Truth Jihad? Hey, I'm Kevin Barrett, host of Truth Jihad Radio. Federal prosecutors, Department of Homeland Security agents, and curious passersby often ask me, what is this Truth Jihad thing anyway? Well, everybody knows what truth is, but jihad is a misunderstood term. Jihad means effort or struggle. The greater jihad is the struggle to be a better person, while the lesser jihad is the struggle to defend the community. Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, did say that the best jihad is a word of truth flung in the face of a tyrant. And that's what we do here at Truth Jihad Radio. Every Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, 5 to 7 Pacific, right here on Revolution Radio.
Find some comfort at Willow's World. A variety of news, commentary, and poetry at Willow's Poetry Corner, where there are comfy cushions and a tempting selection of delectable comestibles. A show that's quirkily and quintessentially British, with a unique twist featuring Willow Andreasen, your host. Join Willow, Monday, 6 to 8 p.m. EST, Studio B.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Just in case anyone's wondering, Dan and I will be glad to take calls during the second hour. I'll repeat the number, which may be familiar to many of you already: 715-245-5975. 715-245-5975. Dan, here's one more story that's a doozy. This appeared in the Daily Mail on the 27th of June. This is a writer for something called Splinter News by the name of Hamilton Nolan. He penned an essay this week warning that the backlash against administration officials will only grow worse. He said that being booted out of a restaurant is mild in comparison to what's coming. When you aggressively F with people's lives, you should not be surprised when they decide to F with yours. Left-wing writer warns Trump administration that opponents will carry out 1970s-style domestic bomb attacks against them. I find all this quite stunning, quite appalling. I certainly hope it's not for real, but I'm terribly, terribly concerned that some wingnut is actually going to shoot somebody, try to assassinate the president. It goes on. Here he wrote in his essay, read a effing history book. Read a recent history book. The U.S. had thousands of domestic bombings per year in the early 1970s. This is what happens when citizens decide en masse that their political system is corrupt, racist, and unresponsive. The people out of power have only just begun to flex their dissatisfaction. The day will come sooner than you all think, when Trump administration officials will look back fondly on the time when all they had to worry about was getting hollered at a Mexican restaurant. Dan, what's your take on that one, too?
Well, it seems to me that there's this obvious, desperate attempt to incite people. Useful idiots, of course, play a very important role in this type of, war that we're experiencing. So, I agree with you. I hope that we do not see somebody get played and suckered into this emotionally. And if you think about all these stories, these headlines you've rattled off, here that, look at how extreme they are. Look at how emotional. They're all just nothing but this kind of feral, wild animal emotion. And that's the aspect of people that I just don't see, except for through the filter of the fake news media, right? I only see and hear about these forms of hatred through the media. I don't see it in my day-to-day life. I see people who, are just trying to survive. They're trying to get through the day. They're trying to have something, that they enjoy to eat, or, conversation. Well, I know I think they really, obviously they would love for people to, they would love copycat, crime to come out of this.
Well, I know you've been under the weather and you may have missed some of these stories, but they're out there. Here's another. This was republished by DC Clothesline, originally came from Zero Hedge. There is talk of civil war in the land of more guns than people. Are you ready to start shooting? Of the 857 million guns owned by civilians, the Small Arms Survey says 393.3 million are held in the United States, which is more than those held by civilians in the other top 25 countries combined. To clarify, there are more civilian-owned guns in the U.S. than there are people. The above quotation highlights the result of a recent World Gun Survey. America has officially had more guns than people for some time. Over the last week, it's become more clear than ever that our political leaders are continuing to stoke the flames of division and might be pushing for us to use those guns on each other. Whether it be their plan to do so, their growing paranoia. Every time a leader hits at violence or civil war, their listeners follow. Saturday, Maxine Waters took a turn for the left. She claimed God is on their side, the side of the children, and encouraged further harassment of Trump officials. Notice how worked up these Mad Max fans were at the rallies. Waters may not be someone I agree with in principle, but she's quite charismatic in the eyes of her followers. Rush Limbaugh offered his opinion on his radio show last Wednesday. If the media continue to generate hysteria over the Trump administration's border policy, somebody's going to get killed. Okay, folks, I'm just going to say it here. If the media keeps this up, if they keep up generating this hysteria, somebody's going to get killed. I think we're pretty close to somebody getting killed already, and I'm not being hyperbolic, and I'm not trying to call attention to myself. I got to tell you, Dan, I'm afraid that Rush is right, and frankly, I'm seeing all this hysteria and these extreme statements coming from the left. They aren't coming from the right. And here's, in my opinion, a very sobering thought. In this in this country where we have 100 million armed Americans, I'm telling you, those 100 million armed Americans were not, by and large, voting for Hillary Clinton or the Democrats.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. And I think what really reveals this psyop to me is the fact that you said, and can you believe, all of this is coming from the left, the extreme left. To me, that says it all. That's the propaganda arm of the oligarchs. Of course it's coming from the so-called extreme left. They will not, this is why I caution people to, steer away from the two-party tyranny. One of the reasons why is because the reality is these folks will destroy and take down the Democratic Party in a kamikaze fashion if that's what it takes to achieve their larger goals. So people with this loyalty, to a political party, to the Democratic Party, well, it used to be this way, or it stands for this, they will squash it like a fly, never to return again if that's what it takes. And then it's all gone. And then your team is just, vanished. And so, that's something I always think about. It's like, well, okay, this attempt, is against this group now. Well, what group will it be next? Because people have this false sense of security where if they are on the team that, appears to be winning or is protected by the mainstream media, then they themselves are going to be protected. And that's just not the case. The whole thing will be taken down if that's what it takes. And, and back to the point is, we're hearing this from the left, of course, because that's a propaganda wing. Now, that doesn't mean that, they're begging, they're just begging. It's like they're banking everything on getting useful idiots to go along with this and, start shooting things up and, rioting in the streets. But the only protesting and riots that we've seen have all been bought and paid for by, the Soros entities. None of this is real. It's all manipulated to such an extreme. And we see the extremes they're going at, and the things that they're saying, these things about Barron Trump and this, I mean, it's shocking. And it's unacceptable, by any other measure, but that's the point, that's where they are, with just saying the most absurd things by any of their, youthful idiot Hollywood talking heads, media talking heads that will, still play along. What's interesting to me are stories about, some of these Hollywood types and others being red-pilled, the Anthony Bourdain being one of the bigger stories of late about that. And just to go on record, Anthony Bourdain was murdered. There's no doubt about that. 200 pounds, 6'4". He's going to hang himself by a thread. Hotel in France.
Not only that, but he's one of the most admired men in the world. He leads a life of traveling around the world, eating gourmet food in exotic locations. He's engaged in all kinds of productions. This guy, I'd say, is about the least likely person to commit suicide of whom I have ever heard.
Exactly. And, I had been a fan of Bourdain's work going back, many years to his humble beginnings on the Food Network. And I had I'd read a fan of his work, and I had the opportunity to meet with him and talk with him at length in Miami over the years, Florida, because, they would always come through there. And, that guy, from my personal experience with him, he is just someone where suicide is not a thought that would ever come to your mind. It just wouldn't. And I've said this for many years now. This whole suicide suiciding people. It's a psyop. People do not commit suicide, but these Jewish oligarchs put this suicide psyop out there to make it seem like it's a reasonable choice for people to make. Oh, okay, well, I'm having a bad day. I'm going to hang myself with a rope in the shower. It's absurd. And one of the reasons why they use suicide is because it's the most blasphemous act that one could make, from a Christian perspective, in a very broad sense. I mean, it's anti-Christ, it's anti-logos, it's blasphemous, and I think that's one of their memes they put out there, suicide and drug overdose, when they murder these people. And Tony Bourdain, right, the guy had everything going for him, and he was someone who, went through his personal struggles, in his 20s in New York in the 80s. And if this guy really wanted to end it all, he's going to OD on heroin, period. I mean, that's what he's going to do. He's not going to get a thread and tie it around his rope and go into a hotel room. ODing it'd be seamless and painless. That would be the way he would go.
Yes.
But he's a tall, thin guy. So somebody who is 200 pounds, and that's light for someone who's about 6'4", which is him. I don't even think it's possible. I don't even see the physical possibility of with a single tie rope to hang himself. I just don't even think it's possible.
You know, he put out a Twitter or Instagram saying he had evidence that would put Hillary in jail. I mean, this was only days before his death.
Right. Yeah. And you know, he had the Clinton trolls after him, which he had said in Twitter. We know that his girlfriend was one of the major figures in the Me Too movement.
Yes.
And if you've seen her talk on YouTube that she presented at that awards show, it is chilling. I mean, it is such a chilling indictment in a room full of these, Hollywood freaks. I mean, that was a very brave thing for her to do. She has a lot of balls. Exactly. And she may have paid a big price for that. And so to me, this is a story that is, of course the media took it and they want you to think, it's suicide and it's another, person suffering from depression and all this complete nonsense. I mean, just complete nonsense.
Let me say my first reaction, by the way, was it was a Mossad hit because he has been speaking out on behalf of the Palestinians. He's been photographed with kids from Gaza. He's making it very clear that this is a international outrage. And frankly, although he's 100% correct, there aren't a lot of prominent people who are taking the kind of stand he has been taking here, showing great courage and integrity on his own part on behalf of what I regard as the great human rights massacre of our time.
Yeah. And I think there's been, a big cover-up for the media, to put a bow on this Bourdain thing and package it just the way they wanted to. But I think it's very revealing when we look at the facts and the circumstances that we have there. I mean, if you just go back, if they haven't pulled it already, Bourdain's tweets and his girlfriend's tweets, I mean, you pretty much have the the storyline going on there. And, for him to make the effort to tweet something, and my point is that Tony was a very thoughtful guy, and he didn't put things out there, if he didn't believe them at the time. And two, he was someone who could admit when he was wrong. He had a sense of humility, which is just such a wonderful quality to have in this day and age that we live in. So to me, these are the interesting stories that are really showing us, are really the barometer of where we are. Bourdain was murdered, and this is all connected to, again, the pedophilia, the Clintons, the Clinton Foundation, the Bushes, the Obamas, all of this, just these oligarchs that have owned and controlled literally every single aspect of our lives for 16, 20 years. Really, I would say the murder of JFK being the turning point, because to me, that's the point where the Jewish oligarchs took over this country. That's where they did it. They used their Freemasonic puppets in Dallas to execute this, along with some skilled riflemen. And that was when, to me, where the Jewish oligarchs took this country away from the Catholic oligarchs. If you look at the state-sponsored religious battle going on. So, and it's been a steady downward spiral ever since. I can't say that we've had a democratically elected president since Kennedy. Certainly, we know we hadn't in the last 16 years. So this Bourdain story is big to me, and they want this to quietly go away. Another rich guy who's depressed and kills himself. But that's anything but the truth of the matter here. and when I first heard the story, just, out and about through people, I thought, oh, wow, this is shocking. And so then when I had the chance later that evening, I looked at the mainstream narratives to see where they want to take us. And of course it was, you should be shocked and disturbed and all these things. And then I saw them pushing these tried and true psyops like depression and prescription drugs and these things. And then I did a minute of objective research, and I was like, oh, this goes back to the Clintons. Yeah, I mean, to me, it was just that obvious and that quick. And I've been pleased to see some, so-called alternative media outlets dive a little deeper into this. But the narrative that's put out there reads like a cliche of Bourdain's kind of pulp fiction writing fantasies, because he was a big fan of, those murder writers and pulp fiction, like classic pulp fiction. Unfortunately, he held people who are just FBI agents like William S. Burroughs and Hunter S. Thompson on a pedestal. But that was what his story read like. Bourdain hangs himself in a cheap hotel in France. I mean, it was just like straight from some of his scrap heap that I'm sure he rejected to publish as a fiction writer. Just so cliched and bad. Just something that, it's just so out of character. Anyone who knows anything at all about him would not believe that story for a moment. I believe a few days ago I saw another person came out, I think someone connected to his family. This was just a headline. It said, we suspect foul play. There's no way he would have done this. This is the point I wanted to make too, is he, obviously had the show for CNN. So apparently he had been shooting and already had amassed all of these hours of material for this upcoming season, where apparently he did have, the goods to expose, some of these crime elements, at the highest levels. So, if that's true, then, what more suggestion do we need to, to look at this from a logical standpoint? So
I think your critique is spot on, Dan. I think you're exactly right. Now, do you agree that, because of the falling apart of the Russian hacking meme, which was made up by Robbie Mook and John Podesta within 24 hours of Hillary's concession speech, and now, the exposure of the corruption at the DNC and the FBI, DOJ and the FBI, it seems to me the Democrats are desperate for issues. They thought that this, school shooting thing was going to be triumphal. Now we're getting all kinds of reports. For example, David Hogg is strolling around New York with armed guards. I mean, massive hypocrisy. Now that these liberal extremists are threatening to assassinate the president and to throw bombs. I mean, the justification for taking guns away seems to vanish at a moment's notice. The very idea of trying to pillory these ICE agents for simply performing their role, their responsibility of enforcing the law, seems to me to be very precarious in relation to the Democrats. I just don't see them having much of a case for the midterms, even though they've been going massively out of their way to try to make one. And we just had a highly unusual upset in New York City, where this fellow, a 10-term Democrat, Joe Crowley, who was widely expected to replace Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House if the Democrats came in, or as the minority leader in the House, has been taken out by a 28-year-old upstart progressive by the name of Ocasio-Cortez, who favors single payer. I happen to favor single payer myself, but I mean, it's a she's a strong candidate, but he was overwhelmingly favored. I think this has created further chaos for the Democratic Party. I don't think they know which end is up.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, and to me, this just, it's very clear in these stories, these things that we're talking about. To me, that's the interesting aspect of these stories, is they're illustrating this level of desperation that I don't think we've ever seen before. And it will increase, and it will continue to increase. And, and I think we have to believe there will be more, of these staged events. I mean, there'll have to be. I'm
very suspicious that this latest shooting, which was just beginning to be reported when I came down to do the show, at a newspaper in Maryland, may very well be contrived to distract attention from the fact that Trey Gowdy is calling out the Mueller team to, wrap up their case because they don't have one. They have yet to produce any evidence whatsoever. The stuff they've gone, they've just been wandering all over in search for evidence, and they've been unable to produce any.
And this is something I've been wanting to mention for a while, because every time, we bring this up, this Russian hacking meme, I've been wanting to point this out just to illustrate, to further illustrate the absurdity of this Russian hacking meme. Not only do we know when it was contrived, which you just illustrated again, within 24 hours of the election, this thing was constructed. We know the players. We know where the meeting took place, and this is the part that I want to mention. We know what they had for lunch when they created this Russian hacking meme. They ordered carry-out delivery of Shake Shack. And Shake Shack is a very popular East Coast hamburger and fries and custard joint. It's like one of those mom and pop places that you probably go to up in Wisconsin, that have custard and burgers and, flavor of the day. I mean, they had Shake Shack, for Christ's sakes. We know what they ate when they made up this lie. I mean, what more to, what's left to milk from this thing? There's nothing. And to me, it's interesting just to watch it now kind of just flap out there in the breeze, with nowhere to go, no explanation. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in that position of Mueller to try to spin this thing in any way that's remotely justifies the last year and a half of our lives that have been consumed by it.
Yeah. Let me reiterate, by the way, that we are going to take calls here the second hour. The number 715-245-5975. 715-245-5975. So, call in with any questions for me or Dan or anything you'd like to talk about. We'll be right here waiting for your call.
And that means you, Paul. We're waiting for you. And Chicago Brew, we're waiting for you. And anybody else who has the guts to call in to the most dangerous mind in America.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
In breaking news, a visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a fifth-dimensional consciousness. They are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitor's peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
Who are you?
I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you.
Why am I here?
You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here.
You haven't answered my question.
The Matrix is older than you know. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation.
Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lassine.
Even the government admits that 9/11 was a conspiracy. But did you know that it was an inside job? That Osama had nothing to do with it? That the Twin Towers were blown apart by a sophisticated arrangement of mini or micro nukes? That Building 7 collapsed 7 hours later because of explosives planted in the building? Barry Jennings was there. He heard them go off and felt himself stepping over dead people. The U.S. Geological Survey conducted studies of dust gathered from 35 locations in Lower Manhattan and found elements that would not have been there had this not been a nuclear event. Ironically, that means the government's own evidence contradicts the government's official position. 9/11 was brought to us compliments of the CIA, the neocons of the Department of Defense, and the Mossad. Don't let yourself be played. Read America Nuked on 9/11. Available at moonrockbooks.com. That's moonrockbooks.com.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free, but there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no less. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Hello, this is Maggie Rose McGrath of The Concord Show.
And co-host Marine Corps Matt, coming to you on Monday and Tuesdays in Studio A, noon to 2 Eastern.
And Studio B on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern, with educational, instructional, information, and situational updates, often with wonderful guests on the current landscape in the U.S. and overseas.
This is a go.
We are with you, side to side, and back to back.
Please join us on Monday through Wednesdays,
as well as other hosts and guests here on Revolution Radio.
We're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore.
Can't handle.
We said we're not gonna
You can't handle fall from California.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Now, as Dan observed, we do get calls from regulars. I have a couple of them standing by right now, but I want to encourage those who may have never called into the show before to consider giving us a call as well. We'd like to hear from you. Don't be shy. The number again is 715-245-5975. 715-245-5975. I should have memorized already, but we got area code 704. Please do speak up and direct your question to me or to Dan. You're welcome to join the Raw Deal.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fetzer. And hey, I don't know if you guys were aware of this, and maybe I misunderstood something, but this guy, the decedent, the guy who allegedly killed himself.
Anthony Bourdain, yeah.
Anthony Bourdain, yeah, okay. I understand. I don't think it's any secret that he's Jewish or was Jewish. And I have heard too that he was speaking out on the Palestinian issue. But
half Jewish.
He had gotten half Jewish. Okay, yeah, he had gotten into a tiff. And I wasn't even aware of it at the time. I didn't hear about it until he died. But he had gotten into it with Dr. David Duke. He had basically made some comment on his show or something to the effect that he thought white people were the source of all the world's problems and that there would never really be peace in the world until all the white people were gone or something like that.
Anthony Bourdain made that statement?
Yes.
Similar
yes,
statement, yes.
Yes, he did. Which is kind of typical of someone in the Jewish community, coming out of the media as far as I'm concerned. So, I don't know. I was wondering if you guys were aware of that.
Well, Paul seems to be aware of it. Paul, why don't you add a few comments here before Dan and I...
Yeah, you can see a clip of it on YouTube, and as a matter of fact, it's been covered pretty well on the New Nationalist and then also Renegade Tribune. It's one of those things where somebody could just be saying something. Not everybody means everything they say all the time. I mean, I think that goes without saying. If we're all held to all the sentiments that we express, I don't think it's any fate any of us would want. But having said that, yeah, it was pretty disturbing. He was having a conversation with somebody in a cafe or a restaurant in a German city. In fact, it might have been Cologne, but I'm not sure. I think it mentions it on these sites that cover. And they were talking about the so-called refugee crisis in Germany. And Anthony Bourdain more or less said that, ultimately the solution is just for us to, keep mixing together so that there aren't really any more white people. I mean, that's basically the sentiments he conveyed in this interview. And, of course, it's just, it's kind of ridiculous thought. And, obviously it's not going to happen unless you take a look and see, what's going on in this country.
Well, it is happening. Actually, it is happening. And, if someone in the media had said that, for example, say about the Jews, there's never going to really be peace in the world until something is done about the Jews, they would be fired immediately, and they would never work again. Okay?
Well, so here's how I would address it. Okay, yes, so yes, it is happening conceptually, okay, in terms of numbers. Now, obviously, there's still hundreds of millions, I don't know how many, but there's hundreds and hundreds of millions of white people in the world. So the idea that we're going to disappear is extreme. However, we are in danger of being subsumed in a non-white, Asian and brown mass. And anybody that wants direct evidence of that, just come to the San Francisco Bay Area. And it hasn't taken more than 20 years, 25 years tops, to feel like a minority in the South Bay. Everywhere I go,
Charlotte.
it's
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina, similar? Are you serious?
Oh yeah, and we've long been a major banking center, so we have a pretty good population. Probably, I would suspect upwards of 1 million people. I don't keep up with things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a heavy illegal population, but that's the scary thing, is how quickly it's happening, and it's not even acknowledged. Not only is there not a debate about it, it's not even open to discussion. You do not talk about it. You're evil. You're designated evil person.
I disagree. I've been talking about it for 15, 20 years, and people may say things under their breath, or they may say things after I've left, but I've had a lot of people nod their heads in agreement with what I say. They might not feel as strongly, but I've been pointing these things out for at least 20 to 25 years.
Let me put it this way: where I am in Charlotte, if you were to go into a forum, public forum or anything, and expect to be taken seriously and get any positive coverage, if you bring it up, that's it. You're done. It's over.
So bring what up exactly?
Keep that quiet. If you bring up the idea that you do not want your city to become the white people to become a minority in your country, I brought it up, and I mean, all hell broke loose on one of my local talk radio shows. It's considered it's the station that plays Rush Limbaugh. I brought it up, and I said, well,
you're talking about talk radio.
Well, wait a minute, Paul. Wait a minute. What was the objection? Just raising the question about racial intermarriage and all that. I mean, frankly, I'm just astonished how many commercials I see on TV where you have a mixed couple, a white man and a black woman, or that's more common. Yes. I mean, it's just becoming absolutely commonplace. And frankly, most of my life, I mean, you never saw anything like that. There are probably more ads that feature black couples than there are that feature white couples these days on television, but also a surprising number of these racially mixed couples.
Yes, it's obviously a sales campaign, and anybody who watches sports like I do, I still enjoy watching sports, and occasionally I bet on sports too. And you can't help but notice whenever you watch these networks, Fox, ESPN, etc., the preponderance of black and mixed-race couples they show, as if there's some large, vibrant middle class that they're pitching to that's black. They show these blacks driving these nice cars and living in these nice houses, and it's just freaking nonsense. I'm not saying those people don't exist. I just don't encounter them.
It's very odd, Paul, that they're doing this. If it's not simply promoting, propagandistically the idea that interracial marriage is a good thing, a desirable thing, and ought to be pursued. I'm not saying people shouldn't marry whoever they like for whatever reason. I'm just saying it looks like this is a deliberate program to promote that attitude. Dan, Dan, I know you've got some opinions to add. Dan, Dan,
go ahead,
we got two Dans. We got two Dans. Yep, tell me about... first in North Carolina, then I'll bring back to Dan Cromer. What was the objection on talk radio? I mean, that you can't talk about interracial relations?
No, I expressed a preference that I would... all things being equal, I would prefer that my country remain a majority white country. That would be my preference.
Yeah.
I was told that I needed to be castrated. Even the weather girl that came on afterwards was talking about me. I've never heard anything like that. I mean, if you're a white person and you express a preference for your own race, you are targeted as being hateful. And I don't care what your test says. If you disagree with that, you are. I don't know where you've had your head.
Very strange.
Well,
very strange.
I can't.
Let me get
your experience.
Years, man. I'm 52 years old. I've been watching this my whole life, man. I'm a very observant guy.
Yeah, I'm not saying it didn't occur. I'm a little bit older than you.
I want to hear from Dan Cromer. Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Dan.
Hey, Jim. Thank you. Yeah, this is obviously social engineering. If our perception of the world was just shaped on the Zionist corporate media, we would think that the world is filled with, faggots and lesbians and homosexuals and transsexuals, interracial marriage. We would think that the world is an effing freak show, with rainbows and glitters, and it's all fake. It's all social engineering. It's all fake. This month, right? You can't, scratch your ass without seeing a freaking rainbow. You can't check your email, right? Because it's Gay Pride Month, right? Are you all enjoying your month-long celebration for this psyop? I mean, talk about it.
I thought every month was Gay Pride Month.
Yeah, and it might as well be, right? I mean, and what we're talking about is about 3% of the world's population are homosexuals, right?
Yeah,
and this was defined as a mental illness until Jewish American psychologist Robert Fetzer attempted to normalize homosexuality by lobbying the American Psychiatric Association. He lobbied them to remove this diagnosis in 1973. So think about this. We have this campaign with like the Super Bowl coverage to normalize an activity that affects 3% of the global population. This is insanity. It's insane. And if you want to talk about trannies, you're talking about 0.00001% of the population. People don't even know these people. They don't even have experience with them. Which is why this is kind of and this is why the tranny psyop has failed largely, because people don't even know any transsexuals.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's so
I've seen the same one in the supermarket off and on for years. That's the only one I ever see. It's obviously a man in a dress. He's significantly larger than I am. I'm 6'2", and I have an athletic build. And this guy is easily 6'4" and a little bit wider frame than me. Man shoulders, man hands, man head, but he wears a dress. And he could just be a cross-dresser. I don't know. But this is the only person that I have encountered in the last 10 or 15 years that you could classify as a tranny. It's a non-issue. The whole thing is absurd.
Exactly.
It's like gay marriage. Nobody cares about gay marriage. I didn't know those facts that you just mentioned, Dan, about whoever that guy was in 1973. If you want to have a kinder way of putting it, but still accurate, instead of saying mental illness, this is what I've been saying, and it's true, is that historically, every culture you can think of, going back as long as you want to go, has regarded it as pathology, okay? And, there's no much more you need to do than that. I mean, just the idea to a normal heterosexual man to picture, to conjure up in their minds what these guys do to each other, it's revolting, okay? So that's how most people feel about it.
Does history not show a correlation?
Go ahead.
History not show a correlation with not only the acceptance but the celebration of homosexuality and aberrant sexual acts with the downfall, the decline of that?
Dan, your breathing is going right into the mic. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Your comment is spot on. I mean, of course it is. That's why this whole homosexuality has been socially engineered and weaponized, because what it represents, it's not about gay or straight. What it's about is the destruction of the family unit. It's anti-logos. It's anti-nature. It's anti-everything that America, right, the corporation, supposedly stands for.
It's not about compassion.
That's what it's about.
It's not about compassion or tolerance. It's not about that. It's actually about hate. It's about destruction of the natural laws, and it's about the destruction of the family and the societal fabric. I'll let you guys go. Thanks.
No, it's good. It's good. Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you.
But there's a further point to what you're saying, and I don't disagree with the stuff about the destruction and anti-family values and so forth. But I go back to, and I think Dan can agree with this, it's not really that big of an issue that you don't encounter these. I mean, I've never had any issues with gay people. When I go out in the marketplace, okay, or the workplace, I'm not competing for jobs with gays, okay? I am competing with 10 million Mexicans, right? Or if I go out to look for a home to buy, I'm not competing with too many gays, but I am competing with too many Chinese and Indians that don't belong here, that are making, good salaries, that are bidding up the prices of real estate. So that's a reality. And you can't be afraid. Yeah. I don't know if Frank is still on the line or not, and I don't dispute what happened to him, but it was on a talk radio show where you're dealing with certain type of mentality amongst the guests. In real life situations, me talking to people, whether it's just out and about or in a coffee shop or whatever, I've had very little opposition to the things I've said because I put it logically and convincingly. And I think there's times where I use my size. I have an athletic build. I'm tall. I have an aggressive manner. Yeah. And I'm not the kind of person that most people will, think of to say, to challenge me or to use any kind of intimidation on me, because for the most part it just wouldn't work. Obviously I'm going to walk away from most situations, but the bottom line is, I'm one of those people. If you just kind of eyeball me, it's like, okay, this guy could probably swing on me, And this brings me to something that you guys were talking earlier about, these this possible violence and civil war and so on and so forth. When you look back at these Trump rallies and the footage that they showed of these brawls and these fights, it's laughable because, for one thing, it was never fair. They always, how should we say, I guess conceptually handcuffed, if not in actuality restricted, what these guys could do to actually fight back. But when you looked at the kind of people, the kind of guys that were going to the pro-Trump rallies, right, they're for the most part alpha-type guys. If they're not actually athletic, they were at least masculine. And when you show the Antifa opposition, oh, what a scraggly assortment of just ridiculous misfits and people that, would pose no threat to these people were a fair fight. If they were to just invite, okay, Antifa and Trump supporters, there's going to be a rally, don't bring any weapons, and you guys can just go at it. All right, what do you think the results would be? Okay, and how many of these so-called these Antifas with the pink hair and all, their bandanas and all this stuff would really show up if it was actually going to be just like a toe-to-toe brawl with equal numbers, like 50 against 50 or 100 against 100? It would always be one-sided. So if there is going to be a civil war, and I mostly agree with Dan, I don't think it, I don't see it, I don't see who it is we're going to fight, right? But if there was, in my opinion, it's already won before it starts. Okay, I can't see any other outcome except for, the kind of, the sentiments that have already been expressed by many polls. I heard recently that up to close to 75% of people agree with Trump just wanting to deport these people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a mythical, it's a mythical war. And I think in many respects, what we're talking about here is mental enslavement of people, because that's the control mechanism. They have to mentally enslave people to control them, because physically it's an impossibility, right? So that's the key. People ask me, well, what can you do? What can you do? Well, you need to rid yourself of this mental slavery that you've been assaulted with from day one, 24/7. Because again, when we look through that matrix of the media, that filter, that's a completely different world. It's what I call the Kabbalistic inversion of reality. I don't think I've seen anything genuine regarding a protest or demonstrators, certainly since Trump has taken office. I remember the day after the election, flipping through, I caught CNN, a rare moment where I caught CNN live, and that was the very first gathering of so-called Trump protesters. This is the day after, or evening of, this is the evening of, the day after the election, the evening, when people started to gather at Trump Plaza. This is the very first time. And I remember seeing that live footage, and the CNN reporter said, we're here live at Trump Tower, where there appears to be an organic gathering of anti-Trump protesters. Yeah, and I stopped for a minute. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not at Whole Foods. They just said this appears to be an organic gathering. So right then I knew the whole thing was a lie. It was all staged. And I haven't seen anything organic since. And then what was funny is my instinct was then proved right, because then later that week it was exposed that one of the folks that they interviewed was a CNN cameraman, and they just literally turned the camera around, had him hit all of the talking points like that Fox tool does, at 911. The guy who was the first one to say ground zero, right, before anyone had even, thought about the word. He's touching on all the points. And that's exactly what the CNN person did, And so I always go back to that moment, because that was the beginning of this era. And organic protest. So I don't see anything organic happening. Nothing.
I just flashed on that image. You probably have all seen it if you've watched enough of these 9/11, videos used to be made back in the day. But the one guy that's interviewed on the street talking about how he watched the planes hit the buildings, and then there was an explosion and fire, and then the buildings just collapsed because the fire was just too hot. It's like, the obvious plant, the obvious shill, just spitting out the narrative within the few hours of the event, So for whatever reason, I just flashed on that when you were telling me that story.
Yeah, these appear to be organic terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers.
Apparently, we've landed on the moon. Also, by the way, just in case
what we know at the moment is it appears that a couple of our Masonic buddies are bumbling around on the moon with a dune buggy.
Well, we're building a secret space base up there, just so you know.
Yeah, and they're taking an average of 1.5 photographs per second. I know it sounds unbelievable, but that's what we know right now.
No, but you said I was just going to say, you said the perfect thing earlier, though, when you were talking about this mental war waged.
Mental enslavement. Mental slavery.
And the perfect thing about, like, for example, on InfoWars, they've been running this thing about this little child was never separated from her mother, and they show the Time magazine cover of Trump staring down, and of course they just put the cutout of this little girl, crying little girl, and Trump like looking down at her. It's obviously a contrived piece, and this is the narrative that they're playing, right? But when you actually think about it, and if I may, I mean, if the listeners out there in the Jim Fetzer land are not tired of Paul from California being a blowhard yet, I'll tell you how I have either won or shut down people with this immigration debate multiple times, including at least two Mexican fellows, both of which I worked with at job sites. Okay, I got one Mexican guy to, after I was done with my little rant, which I'll give you in a second, he just goes, he nods his head and he goes, "I know you're right." Okay, and this is what I say. All right, and I just go based upon history. When you look back at about 1970, the population of Mexico was approximately 35 million. At least that's what we were told. I remember actually learning something like that in like a high school geography class. So in 1970, the population of Mexico was 35 million. By the year 2000, it had gone up to over 100 million. They estimated 105 million. Now, I don't know what it is now. Hang on, the break's coming.
Yeah, Paul, you're going to have to hold that thought. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on the Raw Deal, and I appreciated the call from Frank in North Carolina. We got Paul here from California, and of course Dan Cromer. We'll be right back.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Were they conspiracies?
The Eagle has landed.
Have you ever wondered if we really did go to the moon? If Paul McCartney died in 1966 and was replaced by an even better musician, did you know that Saddam Hussein died in a B-1 bomber strike on 7 April 2003 and was replaced by one of his doubles, who was put on trial and hanged in his place? Or that Osama bin Laden died in Afghanistan on the 15th of December 2001 and was buried in an unmarked grave in accordance with Muslim traditions? That the raid in Pakistan was faked? There's more, including 4 chapters about the end of World War II, which prove that events we've been taught were very different than we have been told. Don't let yourself be played. Read, and I suppose we didn't go to the moon either. Available at moonrockbooks.com. That's moonrockbooks.com.
Looking for a nightcap to fill your listening needs? Come join us on Spaced Out Radio with me, Dave Scott, right here on Revolution Radio. Monday through Friday for 3 hours a night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we will take you down the supernatural path. From ET contact to the paranormal and all of the spiritual, cryptid, and conspiracy stories in between. You can find us right here on Revolution Radio, at spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show. Spaced Out Radio. It's a night of talk and interaction. Are you experienced?
Let us play with all our toys and let us think that way.
Even the government admits that 9/11 was a conspiracy. But did you know that it was an inside job? That Osama had nothing to do with it? That the Twin Towers were blown apart by a sophisticated arrangement of mini or micro nukes? That Building 7 collapsed 7 hours later because of explosives planted in the building? Barry Jennings was there. He heard them go off and felt himself stepping over dead people. The U.S. Geological Survey conducted studies of dust gathered from 35 locations in Lower Manhattan and found elements that would not have been there had this not been a nuclear event. Ironically, that means the government's own evidence contradicts the government's official position. 9/11 was brought to us compliments of the CIA, the neocons of the Department of Defense, and the Mossad. Don't let yourself be played. Read America Nuked on 9/11. Available at moonrockbooks.com. That's moonrockbooks.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
This is your host, Jim Fetzer, on The Raw Deal with my special guest, Dan Cromer, and Paul from California. We had a very good call from Frank in North Carolina. Paul, you were in the middle of a thought when the break hit us.
Thank you for letting me continue. Yeah, so just briefly, if you're following so far, I basically just point out the fact that from 1970 to the year 2000, Mexico's population tripled, one of the few nations in the world to have done so. And during that same period that we absorbed approximately the same number of Mexicans and Central Americans, if you're to believe the estimates. In other words, we've all heard that they don't know for sure, but they think there's probably at least 30 million or more Mexicans and Central Americans living all across the U.S. Okay, the estimate right now, the population of L.A. County is about a third from Mexico, right? So then I just say to people right to their faces, I said, when is enough? When have we done our part to absorb the population of your country to give them a chance at a better life? How many more do we have to take? 10 million? 5 million? 20 million? You tell me, when do we get to say when, or is it you just get to overrun us? Okay, and I look right in their face and I say it just like that. Okay, I can't stand white people who are afraid to state their opinion or afraid to offend anybody. It makes me sick. Okay, I've never been.
Paul, I think that's a wonderful point historically, that we've been doing this again and again and again. And when does it run out? Because so much of this is at the American taxpayer expense. Many of these aliens brought in here are given a better situation in life than most Americans. And my point about San Francisco is intended to underline that fact. We've got all these bleeding heart liberals, including Nancy Pelosi, who's from San Francisco, who does nothing to deal with the American homeless who are forced to live on the street and defecate in the gutters. That, to me, is completely disgusting. It displays the hypocrisy of the left in relation to this immigration issue. They are phonies. They are frauds. They are. The words, escape me to denounce them sufficiently for their grotesque abuse and violation of whatever this country is supposed to stand for, which ought to be looking after the American citizen and defending them. I also think, by the way, there's a simple solution to immigration policy, which ironically entails adopting the same policy as Mexico. Mexico has two basic principles. Number one, you cannot immigrate to Mexico unless you can demonstrate you have something to contribute to the good of Mexico, that you can somehow benefit Mexico. In this case, show that you have something to contribute to the good of the United States. Secondly, you cannot emigrate into Mexico unless you can show you have the financial resources to support yourself and whoever is coming with you, your relatives, your family. That, too, would be very appropriate. If you can show you have something to contribute to the good of the United States and you can have the financial resources to support yourself and your family, come on in. But otherwise, no.
Stay home, yes. Australia used to have a similar policy. We had... when we lived here in San Jose back in the 70s, one of our neighbors is from Australia. And they told us at the time that you could not immigrate to Australia unless you could show either A, you had like $40,000 in the bank, okay, or B, you had a job already lined up and so on and so forth. There were some stringent requirements. But no, right now it's being funded, obviously, and it's amazing when you think about the pace of it and how quickly they're doing it. They're basically, because they have unlimited, money, these people, we don't need to name them, we know who they are, and they're funding the whole thing, right? I mean, they're paying for it. And it's not really coming out. I don't feel it coming out of my check, so to speak. It's not organic, and they've been caught. I mean, people have posted online the flyers that have been put out in Central American and African countries saying, okay, this is how you want to come to Europe. This is how you want to come to America. And,
it's just another weapon. Social engineering weapon, divide and conquer. It's all, identity politics. It's charged by that. It's all emotion. What about the babies? What about the children? It's all fake. It's all staged. It's all nonsense.
But at the same time, I was going to say, but at the same time, it's all very real, unlike the whole gay marriage crap, which isn't real. I mean, I don't know anybody that's ever been to a gay wedding. I've never been invited. It's nothing that ever comes up in a conversation. You don't see it when I get on the road. I don't have gay marriages in my way in front of me going bumper to bumper traffic. It's like, and this is the thing that I point out to some of these Mexican coworkers. It's like traffic, competition for housing. I said, can you at least see where I'm coming from, And it's like, to his credit, the one guy goes, yeah, I know you're right. I said, what if it was happening in your country? What if tens of millions of white Americans were coming down there and bidding down your wages because there's so many of them willing to do labor and so on? It's just like people don't think. Anymore.
This is one of those so-called debates that really frustrate me. This whole immigration debate, is one that frustrates me very quickly because of the way that it's always presented through the media, which is all emotionally charged, and then based on these false premises. Or this leading direction of where they want you to take you. There's never an adult conversation that I see about immigration. The first question that you logically ask is, who are these people and where are they coming from? Why are they coming here? That's the first thing you ask. And when you look at that, then it exposes the whole thing for what it is. a weapon. It's nothing more than a weapon. Now that doesn't mean that it's not real. It's not effective. But to me, that's how you take its power away. That's what I try to do with anything. When you name something for what it is, then you're taking its power away. As it pertains to you.
And the other question you could ask is, okay, yes, and the other question you could ask is, and do we want them? Is it something that we want? Never mind whether we need them. Do we want them? In other words, if it's a house party, we're having a kegger, okay. Do we want you to come? Are you invited? Because essentially, by extension, our nation is our home, right?
Right, and see, and that's a follow-up question, and that's where the first judgment comes into it. See, the question that I asked first, I asked questions without judgments to begin the conversation, right, to not bait some type of emotion. I just said, who are they? Where are they coming from? And why are they coming here? So those are logical questions you ask without an emotion. But once you get into anything remotely political and emotional based with it, then the conversation, the so-called debate, has no chance, has no legs of being productive. And this is why it's such a great issue for them to play. Is this whole immigration thing. I mean, anybody who steps back and thinks about it, looks at this logically, knows that you cannot pick up and go to any country you want to illegally and move in. I mean, it's absurd. Like no one even has this thought. No one's even saying that, but that's really what we're talking about. Are people?
But wait a minute, Dan. Why can't we just give them a better life? Why don't we just give them the opportunity to do? When people say things like that, in world, I love the tagline which they've been fed. Like they just repeat like a parrot. Oh, we're all a nation of immigrants. My immediate answer is no. The founding stock of this country was white. We're a nation of predominantly white immigrants, and we have a 200+ year demographically identifiable core, or what you could also say as an identifiable demographic core, and that's European. Okay, and pretty much quickly, I mean, their mouth just hangs open because I'm saying stuff that is true and real, and they got no comeback for it for the most part. It reminds me
because
too.
There's not one. Yeah, there's not one. When you call out this nonsense, these ideas. This information that does not have sense. It's nonsense, right? Then how do you defend it? What is the counterpoint to these issues that you're raising? Well, there's not one. I mean, that's unless you just want to sound completely insane, and that's why they're left out of the discussion. Let me just say this, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was just going to mention it. I was in a conversation about a week ago, and this woman, this nice woman, older woman, lived her whole life in Hollywood and LA, approached me, and she likes to catch up on the news with me, and and I could tell that she had been in her car for about 2 or 3 days of driving and being programmed by NPR based on the things that the memes that she was saying to me. I just knew it, right? And because everything she said was the Kabbalah, the Kabbalah inversion, right? She was saying, Trump had Bourdain murdered, right? You remember when that tweet where he said he's going to poison him? I mean, it was just everything she said was just maddening. So the immigration thing came up because she's in California, right? She's in this chaos, right? We never had this until Trump, right? Is what she's saying. And she's like, and she said the very, very same thing that you said, but we're a nation of immigrants. And I'm looking at her like, wow, she is seriously saying this. She's deeply programmed. I know she's intelligent. I do like her. And and the first thing that came out was, so your point. I mean, to me, that's like one of those statements that drive me crazy. Like, it is what it is. You're not saying. You're not saying anything because it's not even. It is what it is. Which is a nothing statement.
Can I further refine it and even give you better stuff, if I may? And this is not originally from me. It actually stems from my brother when he first started talking about it back in the 90s. He actually lives in Germany now. But, he first brought this to my attention when he turned me on to this website called VDare, okay? And here's two of the brilliant things that he used to always say, and I found them to be quite effective. So here's the one that you hear all the time about, doing the jobs Americans don't really want to do. I've heard this both in person and, of course, on the media many, many times. And when I get a chance to in person, and I've probably done it a minimum of a half a dozen times in the last 4 or 5 years, I say, no. Let's finish the sentence, comma, at the prevailing wage. Okay, doing the jobs Americans don't want to do, comma, at the prevailing wage. Because as my brother always used to say, and it's a brilliant statement, and it's exactly true, the immigration debate is hampered by the fact that one side does not want it to take place. And you really think about that, it is so true, because academically, scholastically, geographically, demographically, economically, all these issues have been very well settled if one cares to read more than a paragraph or two online. But if you just want to spit out Jew talking points, right, like we're all a nation of immigrants, it's ridiculous. I will embarrass you in front of you, and I will tell you, if it's not obvious to you, whether you believe it or not, I will tell you that I won the debate, okay? I mean, that's how annoying I can be with these people, because I have little patience for dumbasses. Here's another one that you can use, and I think you'll really enjoy this one too, right? It's not so much we're a nation of immigrants, okay, because the people that really settled this country weren't immigrants the way they are today, where they're walking into an already built-in situation. It's like you're checking into a hotel room, and you got your running water, and you got your television, your electricity, you got your mattress, right? And maybe even have room service too. That's what people here are getting. When the white people from Europe came to this country, they settled the land, okay? They cleared, they farmed, they mined, they built, right? So now we have roads and bridges and schools and hospitals and dams, and we have a well-developed economy and infrastructure, and basically a place for people to come and live and make their home. So you know what? Why don't all these immigrants do that in their country? Oh, you know why? Because they can't, okay? They may have to a certain extent, and they may just have overpopulated themselves. I don't really know what their circumstances are. But, the solution to your life being better is not to move in with me. The solution to your life being better is to make your life better in your own country. And
Paul, those are all excellent comments. We have another caller joining us from the 708 area code. Please do speak up.
Fantastic.
And join the discussion.
Hey, it's Brew. How you doing?
Good, Brew.
Hey, Brew.
Chicago Brew.
Yes,
let's have a brew.
Oh, not a mucho. Actually, Paul, you're a good discussion today. Very well.
He likes you today, Paul.
Oh, there's other days he hasn't?
I
didn't know.
Well, I don't like the debating part of things. I like the more adding to it type of thing. So here
I would be.
I want to.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention Paul's beatdown last week. I mean, really just beaten to a pulp. Literally, figuratively. Just took it like a man. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. I tried to call in. I tried to call in and try to talk him down off the ledge.
You can have my home phone number from Jim if you want to console me.
Well,
go ahead, Bruno. You had some stuff to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought he had Nancy Pelosi on last week, but it turned out it was just Paul. So.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, let Paul be a liberal example to all the other liberals in California. So, I want to refer back to some of the earlier stuff. Didn't Anthony Bourdain learn from previous reporters who put out, like, say, Andrew Breitbart said they got something on somebody, and then, of course, they did it before they released the story, and then something bad happens to them? We can call this, as they have suicide by cop, we can call this suicide by Clinton. So,
yeah, maybe.
I think there are two primary hypotheses. One is that it was a Mossad hit because he was supporting the Palestinians, and the other that Hillary did it. And, I'm torn between both. There may have been collusion between them, for all I know.
Right. So as far as the Civil War stuff, this stuff, even when they were saying it like a year or more ago, whenever, even probably maybe during the campaign of the 2016 presidential election, they wanted to bring up this Civil War stuff. They wanted to cite something. And you had people like Mike Adams, Alex Jones, Doug Hagman, Jack Prosovic. They all like to come up with these, multiple other people, but those are the top ones on my mind. They want to just start saying this Civil War stuff. But when you think about what the Civil War is, the actual Civil War that's documented in our history books, the history books they have in the schools, isn't even a real Civil War. And it wasn't about what they said it was. You know what I mean? So
elaborate on that, Brew. Elaborate. Explain what you mean.
If there was an uprising, let's just say to fruition, and I agree with Dan that so many people are occupied with their lives. There's so many people that don't even realize that there's any kind of hoopla going out there because they don't pay any attention to politics, and then people just wouldn't be involved. You know what I mean? So for the most part, they'd have to really send an army in and start breaking things on the streets for people to wake up and actually start defending themselves or whatever. And that's what would actually be part of this. Now they're involved because they're actually defending themselves. What I think here is we have so many foreigners invading armies, invading individuals, fighting against men and groups of women and so on and so forth in this country right now. Basically what we would be dealing with is a foreign invasion. Instead of saying Civil War, I'm reflecting this more to another Bolshevik revolution. This is what I see, a Bolshevik revolution, how they went into Russia in 1917 and invaded a country, and they had enemies inside the gate that they took onto their side, and that's what they did to Russia. I think it's more resemblance to that than any type of Civil War. Go ahead.
Paul, are you there?
Yeah, I was. I was just waiting for you. I mean, I had my soapbox already.
Wow, you've been doing great. Dan.
I was being considerate. Dan there?
Dan, are you there?
Don't tell me I left you guys speechless. Come on, somebody.
No. I mean, I don't disagree with the premise. I think we can frame it in any number of ways. The bottom line is there's a lot of resentment out there to the foreign invasion. I mean, the fact of the matter is not many people like it. I mean, there are some people think it's okay and they tolerate it and they say stuff like, well, as long as they're nice people, it's okay. Just a lot of what I call cuck kind of stuff. But I go further and I say, listen, let's just do the math. I said, China, they estimate is 1.3 billion. That's what they say. Okay, so let's assume that's true, 1.3 billion. The U.S. has just got slightly over the 0.3 of China's 1.3 billion. So how many of them do we want to move here? I mean, the bottom line is, to me, it's beyond alarming. If you're here in California, here in the Bay Area, the invasion and the pace of it and the numbers are staggering, okay? I mean, I told you earlier in the previous show what I'm doing recently for a job. I'm driving a tow truck, all right? Just for the fun of it, and I actually enjoy it. But that minimum of half of my customers, if you will, are either Indian or Chinese. No less than 50% in any given week. And it's held steady week after week after week. We have an app on our phone. The phone they provide is called Towbook, and it shoots us the car and, the make and the model, the location, and whether it's a jump or a tow or whatever. And then you got the name and the phone number. And it's like one Asian name after one Asian name after another, after another, after another. I don't know what the population of the Bay Area is, but I have a feeling whatever number they might tell us, it's probably more than that. So you just have to just further, flesh it out and say, okay, when is we going to say no more? Right? When are we going to say, okay, we're done, no more? And at that point, if we say that, are we now a racist? Right?
I think we got Dan back. Dan, if I'm right, you dropped off there momentarily.
Yeah. I'm back in black.
Yeah, good. Well, California is such a test case because they have this liberal open borders. Jerry Brown's for it, Nancy Pelosi's for it, Maxine Waters is for it. I mean, it's, in my opinion, it's going under. The state's going to go bankrupt, and when they can't even handle human excrement on the streets of one of the world's greatest cities, San Francisco, California is in deep doo-doo, literally as well as figuratively. Deep shit.
I'm not sure if I really. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something?
I mean, do we know that this story is even real?
Which one?
What do you mean, the excrement story?
I'm referring, the excrement in San Francisco. I mean, they've got to get Castro district all cleaned up, right, for their gay psyop parade, which I'm sure they're having on a weekly basis here during this celebratory month. So,
right.
What are the priorities? I mean, it's just.
Well, Jim earlier made a great point though about catering to, foreign people who have never been here before, never spent a day, never done anything, and neglecting our own homeless and our own veterans and our own poor people. And he talked about, he mentioned the fact that the homeless. If I was to walk, I'd have to spend not just 1 or 2 days. I'd probably have to devote a week or more to going to all the places, including alongside the freeway, right, with these tent cities and the interchanges. And it really is unbelievable, all the places where you see people, living or trying to live. And then you juxtaposition that with the amount of high density housing they're building, all these huge blocks that are like 3, 4, 5 stories high, what I call these high density apartments that they're putting up in every bit of retail and commercial space they can find. And I can see just by who's driving in and out of them, and you get around a little bit, it's the vast majority of these people moving in there are non-white. And it's only going one direction, and in my opinion, it's going downhill. And like I say to people in conversation, you call me any name you want in the book, I have an opinion, and my opinion is I'm good with it.
I don't think Dan.
I see this as by design. Go ahead,
Dan. As good a researcher as you are, you're not going to have any trouble confirming what I'm saying here about it. The videos of the homeless in L.A. are just staggering, and in San Francisco, I mean, they're sleeping outside of Starbucks, and it's all just it's grotesque. The United States is not taking care of the United States. This is one of the reasons why we have the President of the United States, the man we have. He's talked about putting America back front and center where we belong.
Yeah, and this is all by design. They want these, so-called tent cities. I mean, they want these images out there. They want to perpetuate the fear. It's like the immigrant. Again, it's using the homeless as this weapon, as a social engineering weapon. There's been all of the funny business that happened in Northern California, in Napa. With people disappearing, after those staged fires going back over the winter, which were anything but organic. It appears that these blue lasers, I'm here with CNN, it appears these blue lasers are organically causing isolated fires among Napa County.
Hey, Dan. Hey Dan, have you heard of this website that's been being pimped on the radio stations up in the Bay Area? It's called holdpg&eaccountable.com, and essentially it's the law firms that are trying to get various suits against PG&E because, of course, the way these fires started is PG failed to maintain their power lines. Yeah, that's the story. I'm sticking to it.
Right? Yeah. What a convenient cover up. The thing to me, this is one thing that I learned from the Northern California fires and the so-called, homeless crisis, is that Airbnb, the website Airbnb, which is, essentially a website for hotels or for people's homes. It's owned by Google. Airbnb is owned by Google.
You guys have been great. You guys have been great. Paul, Dan, Frank, I want to thank all of you. Dan, you were exceptional. Get well, my friend. Thanks to all of you and to everyone out there for listening.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Paul. And anyone out there, you can send me an email at dan.cromer@gmail.com.
Hey, let's do next week's show from a coffee shop or a beer hall.
Great idea.
You got it. You got it.
All right, bye. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Listen
All right, guys.
Revolution,
Thanks, guys.
freedomsbooks.com. We'll be right back after this message.